answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all.
You've talked before about putting more sanctions on Russia. Is that something you're considering more serious?
Absolutely. He's killing a lot of people. I don't know what's wrong with him. What the hell happened to him, right? He's killing a lot of people. I'm not happy about that.
That's President Trump on the tarmac there, sounding off on Vladimir Putin after the Kremlin's largest drone strike yet on Ukraine since this war first started. The president considering new sanctions on Russia as a result, as some lawmakers are echoing that call. They want crippling sanctions, they say.
Crippling sanctions means you're going to have to hit not just Russia, but other nations involved. We'll get to that point in a moment. I hope you had a most joyous and also somber Memorial Day as you took time to remember the real meaning of it, but also enjoyed the holiday for what it is. Welcome to hour number one, Larry Connors USA. Here we are, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m. And when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program. Very easy. You go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook or Twitter, Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook. And everything goes up as a podcast later at NewsTalkSTL and LarryConnorsUSA.com or Larry Connors USA Facebook. Always glad to have you listening, even if you have to listen later because you don't have enough time to do it right now. And reminding you that with Larry Connors USA, you are going to get news, opinion, analysis, and you're also going to get an education. You'll leave each hour with more information than you had than when we began. Later in this hour, I've got an expert lined up for is Israel preparing to launch against Iranian nuclear sites. This was on the front burner last week going into Memorial Day. I was kind of waiting to see if it's going to happen then. It did not so far, but my expert is going to break it down for us in more detail as to what we can expect or not expect coming forward. And that is later in this hour. Still in the next hour, Tulsi Gabbard, Homeland Security Secretary, talking about former FBI Director Comey and these seashells he found on the sand, as he claims, and in part blames his wife. What kind of man would do that? But anyway, she's going to get into him in detail, and I want you to hear that. That is in our second hour. Now, for the issue pressing with us, yes, we had suddenly over the weekend, Russia launched volley after volley into Ukraine. And Trump, rightly so, is upset. He said, I thought we were working things out. What's wrong with Putin? It could be, I'm going to raise this question. Is Putin in charge anymore? I mean, they raised it about us with Biden, and rightly so. Is Putin in charge? Or is he in charge but not of, quote, sound mind at this point? I don't know, but General Jack King, of course, follows him closely, and he had an idea on what's going on right now with this latest action.
Putin is a war criminal. He's targeting civilians. That is a war crime. But he has always done this. In 2000, when he took over, he targeted innocent civilians in Chechnya, which was, he believed there were radicals there threatening Russia, and he went in there. Certainly there were military targets, but he took down entire villages of civilians, no military targets. He went into Grozny, their principal city, destroyed entire neighborhoods. Tens of thousands of people killed as a result of his bombing and artillery that he used on those civilians. In 2015 and 16, he did carpet bombing of Aleppo. He used chlorine bombs. He used cluster munitions that don't self-detonate like the United States does if they're on the ground for a period of time. He used deep penetration bombs to go into underground hospitals and kill the people. It was the largest carpet bombing air campaign ever conducted since World War II. This is who Putin really is. He targets civilians, and he's doing it here to put pressure on the president, because he knows the president wants to stop the killing, and he wants the president to get so frustrated he backs away.
Well, that I don't think is going to happen, that Biden, or rather Putin, would get Trump so upset that get so frustrated he would back away. I don't see Trump backing away. He may indicate, look, here's another off-ramp if you want to continue to work out a deal, but you cannot continue to bomb Ukraine indiscriminately, not without sanctions and other activities applied. As you were hearing General Jack King go through the litany of crimes committed by Putin, this re-verifies, if you had any doubt at all, this is not a good guy. He is not one of the Ayatollahs, but he has all the command and authority they do, only has it over Russia. And Russia has nukes. That's the other stabilizing factor, hopefully, that will keep things tamped down a bit. But that does not necessarily mean that we cannot continue to go after Putin in other ways. Retired four-star General Jack King was with Maria Bartiromo, and the issue came up on, when it comes to sanctions, we basically have tried to shut down anything going in. Well, what about if we get into their banking system?
China is financing this war. They're buying Russian oil at reduced prices. So is India. And they're supposed to be an ally of ours, obviously. Yeah, there's plenty we can do here with secondary sanctions, and I think going after the central bank is something we should have done right from the beginning. Yes, we can hurt Putin. I'm not suggesting we can't. He's just not as intimidated by them as other people are. And that's why we got to have a 1-2 punch here. One is sanctions, and the second punch is continued military assistance along with the Europeans.
And that is certainly going to happen because the European Union is growing more concerned, as rightly they should. They were warned all the way back when Reagan was president. Do not get too cozy with Russia. They will not be your friend. They will turn on you. And, of course, what did Germany and other countries do? They started going to Russia for their oil and fuel supplies. And what is the first thing that happened when they came to a disagreement point? Close the valves. No more oil, no more gas for you. And no soup for you either. But the bottom line is, when you're dealing with someone like this, you cannot expect that they're always going to play fair and above board and that they don't have some undercover scheme that they're going to pull on you at some point. The European Union recognizes that. Now, again, I have not been in favor of continually spending money and equipment into Ukraine. But we've done that so much so far, and unfortunately, a lot of it's not been properly accounted for under the Biden administration. And going forward, I believe we'd have a better handle on it. And that might be the thing that would back Putin down, because if he sees that we are really ready to reinforce actions, this is not boots on the ground. No one is calling for U.S. boots on the ground. To that extent, however, a former U.S. soldier was killed. He had been with the, I believe, with the Marines, and he had finished his duty in Afghanistan, and he volunteered to go into Ukraine and help the Ukrainians. And he was one of the ones killed in the weekend bombings. Not targeted specifically, but caught up in the chaos and the bombings that were raining down at that point. Now, another issue that stands in play is, what is Iran doing? Now, we're going to have my guests a little bit later talk about this in more detail. But this is a good question for General Jack King again, because he's certainly familiar with, you have Russia and China, and you have Iran, and all three of them are working together at various levels and capacities. How much they're going to cooperate or how much they'll begin to back away, we will have to see how it plays out. But General Jack King makes a very good point about Iran and what it's looking to have.
Iran loves to stall and use these negotiations for that end state in mind, and I think that's really what's happening here. That once again, they want to get a framework deal, which is not a final deal, which gives them then maybe a year or 2 years to improve their defenses, their air defenses, which are in shambles as a result of Israeli strikes. And I think they're willing to absorb a strike if it comes, thinking that they'll survive another day, and they'll still be able to get to a nuclear weapon. I mean, you've got to understand how diabolical these dictators are. The fact that they're mullahs and supposed to be religious figures is a falsehood. They're thugs and killers controlling very good people inside of Iran.
And they are in control right now. There are a lot of Iranians, they want to have freedom. They want to come out of the Stone Age. They want to have more of what they see in Dubai. And Iran could have that, but not with the current leadership. And certainly no nuclear weapons. Trump's budget obviously is now in the hands of the Senate. We'll see how fast they're going to act and in what way. At least Trump does hold the trifecta, the executive office, the House side, and the Senate side. But getting a bill through the Senate, how much tampering is going to be done with it. He's already warned, don't muck around with it too much. And Senator Johnson's made the same thing, which in the meantime, Speaker Johnson is also urging Americans everywhere, do not buy the lies that progressives are selling when it comes to this budget and Medicaid.
We are not cutting Medicaid in this package. There's a lot of misinformation out there about this, Jake. The numbers of Americans who are affected are those that are entwined in our work to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse. And what do I mean by that? You got more than 1.4 million illegal aliens on Medicaid. Medicaid is not intended for non-U.S. citizens. It's intended for the most vulnerable populations of Americans, which is pregnant women and young single mothers, the disabled, the elderly. They are protected in what we're doing because we're preserving the resources for those who need it most. You're talking about 4.8 million able-bodied workers, young men, for example, who are on Medicaid and not working. They are choosing not to work when they can. That is called fraud. They are cheating the system. When you root out those kinds of abuses, you save the resources that are so desperately needed by the people who deserve it and need it most. That's what we're doing.
And that's what everyone of sane mind has been wanting. Get rid of the fraud, the abuse, and the waste. Therefore, there'll be more money going to people that truly need it, and not the bums sitting at home eating Cheetos in their beanbag chair. And yeah, they exist. You have to keep in mind the mindset we have been given by the progressive legacy media over the last 4 years in particular, and before that as well. And they're still out there pushing it. They want you to believe that everything the left has been doing was done for the better of mankind and our children, and yet maybe there was a sacrifice point that they were willing to accept. I don't think you would. Point in mind, Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno, he was tearing into the leftists because remember how much they closed down our schools during COVID. And we were all aware and knowledgeable then. You're cheating these kids of valuable education, and you don't really need to. They're not the most vulnerable. Well, Senator Moreno had one of those former Biden members in front of him.
But you were lieutenant governor and you were the point person. Do you think the governor made a mistake in closing schools?
We reopened the schools as soon as
we get the teachers. Did you think he made a mistake?
Well, if I can, may I answer the question, or is this senator going to filibuster me, sir?
No, you're going to answer my direct question or just say I'm not going to answer you.
No, I'm going to answer your question.
Do you think it was a good idea, yes or no, the two choices in this answer? Do you think it was a good idea to close schools? Simple answer. Just give me a yes or a no.
As we had COVID surging through our society because there was massive spread from children to adults, We were waiting to make sure the teachers
So let me get this straight. You sacrificed the lives of children because maybe they would spread something that you don't know to adults. You thought that was a good idea. That's
No, that's not always it. Actually, it's your party that's trying to close our schools and get rid of the Department of Education. So we do have
so we're not politicizing this hearing. Okay, we're moving on.
You said my governor said other governors that close schools, which is a politicization of the issue.
When I'm in Hawaii and I'm having a hearing before you, you can interrupt me. When you're here before the United States Senate, you're not going to interrupt me. Moving on.
But he made his point clear, didn't he? You were willing to sacrifice these kids in the fear that maybe, possibly, could be lightning strike 25 times in the same place. So we're going to change everything up. And the children will be the sacrificial lambs. You cannot deal with these progressives on a truly civil discussion. Congressman Clay Higgins of Texas was talking about the values and contributions of Martin Luther King.
Please keep Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s name out of your mouth. He was a proud and unapologetic black man fighting for equality for black Americans and all marginalized people.
I appreciate my Democrat colleague for exemplifying exactly the kind of oppression of freedoms that we're referencing. How about we'll quote whoever we want to quote? How about that's my First Amendment right? How dare a white Republican quote Martin Luther King? We actually had a congressman say that just now. Thank you, good lady, for once again exemplifying the type of oppression that we stand against. We will quote who we please, and we will continue to speak freely. I'm a veteran. That's the country that I serve. That's a Constitution I swore an allegiance to, and that oath has no expiration date. I will fight for it with my last life's blood, for my right to speak freely and yours.
Louisiana Congressman Clay Higgins. And Louisiana, rather than Representative Ayanna Presley. Keep Dr. Martin Luther King's name out of your mouth. He was all about the black man. He was about equality for all people. Trying to raise up black standards, but also for all people. But you're not allowed to say his name if you were not a black person fitting Ayanna Presley's attitude. Later in this hour, what do we know about the pipe bomber on January 6th? They got video of him planting the bombs. Are we going to get any full disclosure? And up next, Israel preparing to launch strikes against Iran. Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
In all these years that Wellington Environmental has been my sponsor, I've never mentioned their duct cleaning services. Allergy season is here, and Wellington crews clean air ducts daily in homes and commercial buildings, also cleaning air handling units and diffusers in commercial facilities. Why? Well, because people will see black dirt and mold on the vents, or they are actually suffering from allergies. Don't be fooled by low-cost duct cleaning providers saying they charge only per vent, because once they get on site, the price will skyrocket. Wellington does not do this, never has. Wellington will give you an estimate, and you say Larry Connors, and immediately you get a 20% discount. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 314-644-4930. Make your home and business better, safer with Wellington. Be well with Wellington. Ackerman Toyota is #1 in sales for 2024. That is 2 years in a row. It's really no surprise. Ackerman has the largest customer lounge where you can relax, take your time choosing new or premium pre-owned. Ackerman at Hampton and 44. AckermanToyota.com. Thank you for making Ackerman Toyota #1 2 years in a row. AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota for life. John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Beal has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Beal. The Oak Street Inn and Lounge has some great news. The Speakeasy will now be open on Sundays, starting at 2. Open to the public. Great for those in the industry who'll want to enjoy a Sunday fun day. Plus, enjoy sushi and cocktails. What more could you want? You want to make sure you get the code. And how do you get the code to the Speakeasy? You go to the Facebook, Oak Street Inn and Lounge Facebook. I'll see you at Oak Street Inn and Lounge in Cottleville.
This is News Talk STL. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. Last week, the word was circulating that the U.S. has new intel suggesting that Israel is making preparations to strike Iranian nuclear facilities. Even as the Trump administration been trying to find a relationship with Tehran where they would back off and cease any concern. But Israel's not necessarily going to wait on the sidelines because they know the enemy they're dealing with. It's in their backyard. They cannot wait for more talk. At some point, something has to be done. Are we at that point now? Joining us now, Kenneth Abramowitz, author of The Multi-Front War, Defending America from Political Islam, China, Russia, Pandemic, and Racial Strife. Also the founder of SaveTheWest.com, basically a site dedicating to saving Western civilization from itself, which is a good idea. Kenneth, welcome aboard, sir.
Thank you very much. Happy to be with you.
Well, tell me, first of all, I hope you had a great Memorial Day weekend.
Yes, great.
Now, looking at what we heard last week, going into the last weekend, it appeared, according to intel from the U.S., information that had gotten out, you never know the veracity of it, but that we were watching Israel prepare to strike the Iranian nuclear facilities. What's your word on that?
Well, someone has to stop Iran in their nuclear weapons program. It's really America's job, but Israel's also prepared. So the real question is who's going to do it? I think it's going to end up being Israel, even though it's America's responsibility.
In other words, you think it would be with America's consent or at least passive permission?
Well, I think it would be with America's consent. And also bear in mind, Israel gets about 2/3 of its weapons from America. So by definition, America would be involved. The question is, will America be involved directly or indirectly? You see, America has much bigger bombers, obviously, than Israel has. So when you're going after big targets deep in the ground, it's a lot easier to do it with American B-52s and B-2 bombers than Israel's far smaller F-15s, F-16s, and F-35s.
Well, to that extent, would be worried about American troops in danger. They're not boots on the ground, but they'd still be in danger, except that Iran does not really have an Iron Dome as Israel does.
That's right. And a few months ago, Israel destroyed Iran's defenses. So Iran's basically defenseless right now. And this is a golden opportunity to attack. The challenge is that President Trump, and he says this publicly, we have to stop them from getting nuclear weapons, but I want to negotiate a deal. I don't want to use military resources unless I have to. And I think he's increasingly going to realize that he has to. So the only question is, does America lead the effort or Israel? My guess is Israel will lead the effort, and America will selectively destroy various targets that America is uniquely capable of destroying.
All right, let's say we get to that point. Where do you see Russia and China?
Russia and China will stand down because they'll complain and they'll say how tragic and terrible it all is, but I don't see Russia or Chinese planes challenging America or Israeli planes. And if they do, they're all going to get shot down because, particularly from Israel, Israel has been fighting for almost 2 years. I mean, their pilots are the most experienced pilots in the world right now. So if they're challenged by China or Russia, their planes are going down.
Right.
And I don't think those countries want to go through the embarrassment of having their planes shot down by Israel or American pilots.
We're also at a point, though, that you can have drones carry out some missions.
Yes. And but China and Russia are too far away, and Russia's too consumed with Ukraine to send any drones. But Iran has a lot of drones, and they're very good at producing drones. And
but they would not be effective.
Those drones to attack Israel.
You don't see they would be effective against incoming U.S. bombers or things of that nature. And in fact, we know that, as you said earlier, Israel's hit Iran deep inside Iran to prove that it can reach right inside. So there has to be a sobering message if the others are rational.
You just mentioned a word that I don't think exists in the Middle East. You mentioned rationality.
Right.
Are you sure we're talking about the same countries here?
Well, you're correct. I stand. I'll go sit in the corner. Go ahead.
Everybody except Israel, everyone in the Middle East is crazy, okay, and lunatics and emotional, and they're on missions from Allah to destroy the world. They're death cults. So we're talking about pure lunatics. So lunatics, in a way, are predictable. You know they're not going to negotiate. Lunatics don't negotiate. We didn't end World War II in 1939 because we negotiated with Hitler,
right,
or we negotiated with the Japanese. We unfortunately had to go through the painful process of a 4-year war. And that's the history of lunatics, is lunatics think they can take over the world and get away with it, and you can't dissuade them other than stopping them, pure and simple.
You're listening to Kenneth Abramovich, author of The Multi-Front War. And when you say everyone is crazy, it's actually those at the top, the leaders. How many do you think below them really want to see peace and take what Trump is offering, commerce instead of chaos? Take Iran and turn it into a destination point, and you can build your big towers that look like Abu Dhabi.
Well, reports that I read indicate that about 80% of the Iranians would love to get rid of the lunatics running their country. And the trouble is the lunatics running the country, or the death cult running the country, have guns. So you could be the other 80% actually rational portion of the population, but you don't have the guns to eliminate the criminal organization. So, but I think what will happen is after the nuclear sites are blown up, and after their Navy and Air Force is blown up, and after their industrial base is blown up, there'll be such anger in the population, and the lunatic leaders will get overwhelmed by the 80% of the population.
You're talking about an Arab Spring War type thing, but only after the suffering?
Yes, I think they have to go through a suffering period, unfortunately. And then the people, the expression, they'll be madder than hell, and the people will be madder than hell, and the leaders running the country will lose their confidence as all their pet billions and billions of evil projects get blown up. That I think we can then have regime change. And Iran should be a normal country. Iran historically has been a normal country.
Yeah, I know.
Unfortunately, they were taken over.
Yeah, I know several Iranians. They're all great people. I know a couple here that have since come to the U.S. Since they overtook our embassy, and they have now become U.S. citizens. They're some of the most patriotic Americans I know.
Yeah, Iranians are great, and they're smart, they're educated, they're hardworking. They have all the values of Americans. They would fit in nicely. But there are 80 million of them or so in Iran, and they deserve a much better future since they were hijacked, really, by a criminal organization around 45 years ago.
Let me take a moment to speak about your founding of the SaveTheWest.com, a website dedicated to saving Western civilization from itself. Give me a couple of bullet points on what we need to do to save ourselves.
Yes, I wrote the book 5 years ago. I updated it 3 times. I also have a website, SaveTheWest.com, which gives tidbits of how to save Western civilization. I'd say the number one conclusion is we have to realize that we're in World War III. We have to manage the country at a war footing. Not that we want to, but when you have enemies attacking us in many, many different ways, on all different fronts, you have to manage the war. You can't just episodically handle this issue or that issue. So number one conclusion is manage World War III as if we're in war. And number two, spend the money that's necessary. And number three, attack, particularly culturally. You don't have to necessarily fight a war and blow things up. But we should be undermining the Russian society, Chinese society, and the Iranian society.
All right. Kenneth Abramovich.
That's how to save us.
Thank you, sir. Kenneth Abramovich, author of The Multi-Front War. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure to be with you anytime.
You bet. Coming up, you remember the bomber that was placing bombs on January 6th? There's video of him, and yet he still hasn't been found.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
I've got a phone number for you and a website where you can take a free, quick survey to learn how to use artificial intelligence, AI, to put your company on a fast track to the future. Here's the number. It's a 636 area code, 636-689-0545. 689-0545. This is PRI Global. And recently, the St. Louis Business Journal named PRI Global as a leading IT consulting company. 25 years working with hundreds of companies, several Fortune 500, locally and around the world. PRI Global has its own AI lab to develop what's best for your company. Take the free survey and be on your way to the future. 636-689-0545, 689-0545, or go direct priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. You want the best place to watch baseball or any sport and be able to enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys? Lit Cigar Lounge. Lit has so many events each month. You need to constantly check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook. You don't want to miss anything. Plus, you can order food from Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, delivered within minutes right to your table. By the way, we're in the season for great patio dining. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta has your table waiting. Renewal by Andersen has a great deal for you. $279 off every window. $729 off every patio or entry door. No payments. 0 interest for 18 months. Andersen products increase a home's value by at least 15%. Renewal by Andersen is the full-service window and door replacement division of Andersen. RBA STL. RBA STL. Hey, if you're 50 or older, you do not want to take any risk with your money. In fact, you want Leslie Consulting. My friend Bob Leslie can show you a gain and retain plan. It means that you never lose. Plus, you get up to a 20% bonus on day one. Leslie Consulting, a leader in brokerage and risk management. 314-721-0066. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. Roxanne, you don't have to put on the red light. Roxanne.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
We have video of the person planting the bomb, and I just, if you scope out a little bit, that the January 6th investigation itself was one of the most extensive in the FBI's history. They used the most draconian techniques they've used in any investigation, going to the banks and asking for broad data dumps, going geofencing, to see who was conducting cellular conversations, cellular contacts on the Capitol, in and around the Capitol grounds. And why couldn't they have solved this much more serious breach of federal law and planting a weapon of mass destruction at a political headquarters? I just don't get this part of it. I mean, they literally scorched the earth finding the slightest trespasser, and yet somebody plants a bomb and they can't get to the bottom of that. That's what I find, that I am very much looking forward to what happened during the course of that investigation and why we couldn't get to the bottom of that one.
And that's a very good question, and that's raised by a former deputy FBI director, Chris Swecker, as he was being interviewed, and he's talking about, look, of all the things that are still out there that we still want answers on, that's one of them. We want to know, what about that bomb device? Not one, but two. One planted near the RNC, one near the DNC. And to keep in mind, Kamala Harris made a visit to the DNC headquarters that same date, all on January 6th. They were out there looking for everything and everyone that might be associated with January 6th, but they ignored a crime right there in front of them. And there is video, extensive video. I've watched it repeatedly. The guy's hooded. Particular pair of tennis shoes might be identifiable to those who trace that down and everything else. But the bottom line is, this is a guy walking around with a particular backpack, placing these devices and walking away. Why weren't they looking for, why have they not gotten into that in more detail? Oh, that's right, I forgot. The Biden White House was in charge of the FBI. That is changing. It's already been made clear by FBI Director Kash Patel and his assistant, Dan Bongino. We're going to get to the bottom of that. We've got some others we're going to get to the bottom of. One of them being cocaine. That cocaine that showed up in the White House, how did that get there? With all the cameras and all the security in the White House, a baggie of cocaine just happened to be found in a locker that someone had a key to at some point. Remember, this was in 2023. Bongino has said, and I'm quoting him from his post remark on X, shortly after swearing in, the director, talking about Patel, and I evaluated a number of cases of potential public corruption that understandably have garnered public interest. We made the decision to either reopen or push additional resources and investigative attention to these cases. These are the D.C. pipe bombing investigation, the very one I was just discussing, the cocaine discovery at the prior administration's White House, and then the other. That would be the leak of the Supreme Court Dobbs case. He said, I received requested briefings on these cases weekly, and we are making progress. If you have any investigative tips that might assist, please contact the FBI. Officially, the FBI is having no additional statement. Trump was asked, who do you think left the cocaine in the White House? And his answer, well, either Joe or Hunter. Could be Joe. The bag of cocaine was discovered July 2nd, 2023 in a storage locker near the entrance to the West House West Wing. The Secret Service at that time, when they discovered it, launched an investigation. Couldn't find anybody. I mean, it just overnight and magically appeared in that locker. July 12, the Secret Service received the FBI lab results, did not find any latent fingerprints, insufficient DNA for investigative purposes. Might well be true. Therefore, the Secret Service in 2023 said, we can't compare it to anyone against any known pool of individuals. Known pool would be those who were supposed to be in the White House. So you tell me you eliminated all of them? Well, then why don't you come out and say that neither Biden or Hunter's prints are on there? Or were they not your known pool of suspects? Trump had said in the interview, so when they went to look at it, it was absolutely stone cold wiped dry, right? Now, again, the Biden family, including the former president and Hunter, were not at the White House when it was discovered. They were at the presidential camp retreat in Maryland. I left it behind. Whoops. Guess I'll have to get some more. And then you have the Supreme Court issue. Who leaked the word about the Supreme Court Dobbs ruling coming out in advance? Now, here's where the FBI has not been involved. It was carried out by the Supreme Court's investigative committee, which is a subject to the Supreme Court. No, there's a lot more to be learned from this. You think we're going to get it anytime soon? I do think with Patel and Mangino saying we are going to continue to look at it. For one thing, the J-6 bomber, while they were chasing down anyone and everyone who flew into D.C. that day or might have used a credit card somewhere within the fence perimeter of the White House. I'm not talking about the fence around it. I'm talking about a geofence, maybe within 2 miles. If you were purchasing something at a drugstore, your credit card and your information got scooped up. You do know that. You're in their file. They gathered your information because they were looking for anyone and everyone. And yet, when it came to the tape, boy, we just can't make much out of that. And then we have the other issue that truly affects our nation as a whole. The auto pen device is used routinely to sign birthday cards, greetings, basic declarations of honoring someone, things of that nature. That's the purpose. So the president doesn't have to sit there and do it directly. The presidential signature written by the president is done for executive orders and legislation. You don't put that under the auto pen. It must be done directly. Well, therein lies a question about all the signatures recently coming from the Biden, including the pardons, all the pardons that were given. That's an executive action. That would have required an actual signature, not just put it through the auto pen machine. James Comer, House Oversight Committee.
When you sign a document that has legal implications, it has to be signed personally. It can't be signed by an auto pen. So I think that if we can understand more about the auto pen and whether or not Joe Biden authorized it, I think this could lead to a lot of those executive orders being kicked out in court.
Yeah, I hope so. And they're going to be taking a look at that, as they should. And I would say the same, just in case. I always call balls and strikes here. If the auto pen was used to sign some of the pardons that Trump had granted, that also needs to be recalled and reviewed. You know, it's never hard to understand where the progressive left stands when it comes to American values. I mean, they're always going to be against American values. They will mouth it and they will shout the C word, Constitution, when it works for them. But otherwise, they see nothing, hear nothing, and they say nothing. But we have a perfect example of what happened over this weekend. Memorial Day weekend, Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson focusing not on the sacrifices made for our country, which did include 12,000 blacks who died during Vietnam. That's about 12% of our total casualty count. But his focus was Africa.
Hello, I am Mayor Brandon Johnson, and I am proud to join you in recognizing and celebrating Africa Day. The continent of Africa is made up of 1.2 billion people with diverse countries full of rich traditions, cultures, and heritage. So this Africa Day, let us take a moment to celebrate the achievements of the people of Africa. Thank you, and happy Africa Day, everyone.
I have no problem with celebrating them and marking that, but it's Memorial Day weekend. You are, maybe I should correct that. You are an American. Maybe I should ask, are you an American? And he just dissed it. You want the true focus on Memorial Day and our nation's sacrifice? President Trump was at Arlington National Cemetery. That story when we continue.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
The Napoli heritage of fine dining continues with Napoli Kirkwood. Napoli Kirkwood, now open. So add that to Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, and don't forget about Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in the district, Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, plus now, open, Napoli Kirkwood.
This is Larry Connors, USA. Larry Connors, USA.
These warriors picked up their mantle of duty and service, knowing that to live for others meant always that they might die for others. They gave everything, and we owe them everything and much, much more. Every Gold Star family fights a battle long after the victory is won, and today we lift you up and we hold you high. Our debt to them is eternal, and it does not diminish with time. It only grows and grows and grows with each passing year. The greatest monument to their courage is not carved in marble or cast in bronze. It's all around us, an American nation, 325 million strong. Thank you, thank you, thank you for giving America the brightest light in your lives.
And, of course, against the backdrop of TAPS. The Supreme Court, since we're talking about our American freedoms and what we have with it, today declined to hear a case involving a Massachusetts student who got banned from school. Why did he get banned, and why was this a Supreme Court issue? He wore a shirt criticizing the transgender movement. Liam Morrison, through his father and step-parents, argued that the school district violated his free speech rights when it banned him from wearing 2 T-shirts to schools with the words, "There are only 2 genders." And another one, there are, the word censored, genders on the front. He was sent home both times because he refused to change shirts. The school argued the shirts made his classmates feel unsafe. You know, some are triggered by the U.S. flag. And a federal court agreed, saying the message was demeaning for transgender students. It's a fact of science, follow the science, as Dr. Fake Fauci had insisted. Justice Thomas and Samuel Alito both issued separate dissents. They argued the court should take up the case. They want to get into the details and iron it out and press up on the American public what your free speech is and is not. And in this case, you can't do this simply because you're a school district. They will continue to do it. This comes nearly a year after the First Circuit Court of Appeals ruled against him, saying the school was justified and asking him to remove the shirt and send him home because he refused. At the time, he was in the 7th grade. He later wore the same shirt with the words "Only 2" covered, with a piece of tape on which he wrote "Censored." The school made him take that shirt off. So now he's wearing a shirt. There are only 2 genders. There are only, with a piece of tape, "Censored genders." He said, "I was just voicing my opinion about what I believe to be true. I feel some people may think I'm imposing hate speech, but it's not directed towards anyone." Your kids could be caught up in this any day. They wear a shirt or a hat. There are only 2 genders. Or they wear an American flag. I mean, where does that kind of stuff stop? They are willing to use the Constitution against you repeatedly. They're not willing to use the Constitution to defend you unless it fits their case. Coming up, I want you to hear from Tulsi Gabbard, our Homeland Security Director. She really calls out former FBI Director James Comey and what he supposedly found on the seashore. And more importantly, she also calls him out for what he had to say about his wife. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. Great patio season to enjoy any of the Cafe Napoli locations. How about the Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield? Enjoying coal-fired pizza, nothing else like it. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. A few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, where you can enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys. Check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook for details, plus gift cards for friends. I'll see you at Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield. Ackerman Toyota is #1 in sales for 2024. That is 2 years in a row. It's really no surprise. Ackerman has the largest customer lounge where you can relax, take your time choosing new or premium pre-owned. Ackerman at Hampton and 44. AckermanToyota.com. Thank you for making Ackerman Toyota #1 2 years in a row. AckermanToyota.com. Ackerman Toyota for life. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as Support Dogs for Our Brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. I can tell you how to get a free quick quiz to see how artificial intelligence can boost your company's potential. You go to PRIglobal.ai, PRIglobal.ai. St. Louis Business Magazine listing PRI as one of the leading IT companies. And PRI has its own AI lab to develop what your business needs. PRIglobal.ai. PRIglobal.ai.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
Please keep Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s name out of your mouth. He was a proud and unapologetic black man fighting for equality for black Americans and all marginalized people.
I appreciate my Democrat colleague for exemplifying exactly the kind of oppression of freedoms that we're referencing. How about we'll quote whoever we want to quote? How about that's my First Amendment right? How dare a white Republican quote Martin Luther King? We actually had a congressman say that just now. Thank you, good lady, for once again exemplifying the type of oppression that we stand against. We will quote who we please, and we will continue to speak freely. I'm a veteran. That's the country that I serve. That's a Constitution I swore an allegiance to, and that oath has no expiration date. I will fight for it with my last life's blood, for my right to speak freely and yours.
That was, of course, Congressman Higgins making it very clear in a Louisiana accent. I'll say what I want, and I will quote what I want, and your attempt to silence me is not acceptable. As he said, you did a very good job, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, of telling us what is not free speech and what we cannot do. That I, as a white man, I cannot quote Dr. Martin Luther King and praise him. And her attitude was, you keep his name out of your mouth. You know, they have fallen back into this. I'm trying to find the right word that would be a polite word, and at the same time an incisive word. Bastardization. That you cannot use a word that if they decide you can't. He was praising Dr. Martin Luther King. He wasn't trying to knock him down, and she dared say, you keep him out of your mouth. Welcome to hour number 2, Larry Connors USA. We're here every Monday through Friday for you from 6 to 8 p.m. And when we're on the air, we are streaming video for you. You can watch. You go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook or Twitter, LarryConnorsUSA.com, Larry Connors USA Facebook. And everything goes up as a podcast after we finish. You get it both video and audio from NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, which, let me take a moment to remind you, if you go to LarryConnorsUSA.com, there's a button you can push, and we will automatically send it to you and your email every day until you say you don't want it. Nobody ever cancels on us. And we don't sell your information to anyone. But it's an easy way for you to get it so you don't have to go hunt it up in case you can't catch it. And then also you can share with others. We always encourage sharing. We want more people to be involved in this program. Because with Larry Connors USA, you are going to get news. You're going to get analysis. You're going to get opinion. You're also going to get an education. You'll walk away with more knowledge than you had when we began. One of the things that we've been watching is what Trump can do with Iran. We discussed that in great detail in the preceding hour. In case you missed it, again, I encourage you to pull it up. And trying to broker a deal for them. He's offered them, the wording has been, we'll give you commerce instead of chaos. Do you guys not want to have a better country? You want to bring yourself into the current century? Well, we can help you do that, but you're not going to allow or be allowed to have nuclear devices. We're not talking about nuclear power plants that are destined only for powering and helping your people. We're talking about weapons of mass destruction. And Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said that is one point there is no give.
We discussed Iran and we discussed where Israel's position was, and I also delivered the message on where the president was. And the president will never accept a nuclear-capable Iran. He will never accept them having nuclear weapons and building the capacity to that. The intelligence information that they have and that Israel has and they share with the United States and that we also have and are using for those conversations is critically important. So I think the message to the American people is we have a president that wants peace, but also a president that will not tolerate nuclear Iran capability in the future.
And you do not want him to sell out on that point. If he sold out, if he gave an inch on that point, they would take a mile. Obama did that. Yeah, he did. And he said, look, they will not have a nuclear weapon on my watch. That's correct, because they got that deal signed with them and some other foreign nations. It was not an official U.S. treaty. Never went to the Senate. They got France and Germany all say, oh, yeah, that's okay for them to have nuclear capability. But Obama said, look, they're going to do it anyway. Let's sign a deal and try to put restraints on it so they won't get it anytime soon. Not on my hands, not on my watch. But when I'm gone, better dig deep in that bunker. We have too many, though, that are out there that are saying, look, if that's what they want, if that's what it would take to reduce tensions, it will not reduce tensions. It will escalate them. Maybe not today, but for tomorrow. And for your kids and your grandkids and the others, they will end up having to deal with it. By the way, a couple of points that need to be brought to your attention. Consumer confidence is seeing the biggest boost in 4 years. 4 years. Who says that? This is a Conference Board's Consumer Confidence Index, jumped by 12 points in May, the largest monthly gain in 4 years. Well, I thought tariffs were going to destroy everything. If you listen to the left, yeah. But if you look at the facts, up 12 points in May, the largest monthly gain in 4 years, because Americans grew more upbeat about the economy, the job market, their own financial prospects. The reading came in at 98.0. That is up sharply from April's 85.7. It blew past all the forecasts. And they say it was not just a bounce, it was a breakout. It measures how consumers see the next 6 months, and it soared the most since 2011. And all of this, of course, coming after Trump's trade tariff war. We're going to talk about dealing with China here in a little bit as well. But another survey I want to share with you to that extent, which, well, let me give you a headline on this China thing. I don't want to get too far from that with this information. A lot of the stock market reaction, and again, I caution you against watching the stock market on a day-to-day basis and trying to make some sense out of it. But here's what has happened and created a new rally, a new sense of optimism. The U.S. and China have agreed to maintain communications, and all analysts call that a positive sign after those high-level financial talks they held in Geneva. And the U.S. and China agreed to keep all lines of communication open, in suggesting they're going to continue more engagement on various tariffs. One Chinese expert said it might not indicate a breakthrough, but it is a positive sign that Beijing now knows who to talk to on the U.S. side. This call obviously brought them closer together. And in fact, many of the European nations are now watching this, and they're moving closer. What do we do to get on the correct side of Trump? And he's already offering I will hold off on imposing some of the sanctions, the tariffs, I should say, to be leveled against European countries. So again, they're excited. It's good for them. And then you have this Rasmussen report. And Rasmussen's Mark Mitchell announced on Twitter, it's his group that did the polling. And he said, holy crap, it happened. Holy crap, it happened. That's why he wrote it. For the first time in our polling history, Rasmussen, a majority says the country is on the right track. And he added, don't F it up, Republicans. For the first time in 29 polling years, Rasmussen shows 50% of our nation believe we're on the right track. 45% say, no, it's the wrong track. Well, they're going to be the naysayers. 5%, I just don't know. I don't know. How could you not know? And for the 45%, it's just anti-Trump. That's all it amounts to. And in the midst of them, deep into them, you got the really hardcore guys that are not going to accept anything. Rasmussen states that this is not a one-night aberration. It's a tracking poll that averaged the last 5 days, stating this is uncharted territory. Now, you break it out demographically, politically. 75% of the GOP, along with 31% of the Democrats, said, you're on the right track. That's pretty strong, even within Democrat circles. You know, it's always been a joke in a newsroom. If you want to improve the newsroom morale, put in a free gumball machine. Yeah, just a free gumball machine. Doesn't cost that much. Everybody suddenly feels, hey, that's pretty good. Or you have my suggestion, put in a free bar. That's mine, but maybe the gumball machine is a better idea in a newsroom. But talking about where we are and the response we're getting from others, White House spokesman Steve Miller.
The Democrat Party has been thoroughly, completely radicalized. They're an open borders party. They're a communist party. They're a party that excuses violence and left-wing terrorism. They're a party that's polling at 21%. But if they keep fighting to spring illegal alien gang members loose from foreign countries and bring them back to terrorize our families, that 21% will go down to 15 and 10% and lower, because Americans, above all else, expect their government to keep them safe. And Donald Trump is fighting harder to keep our families safe than anyone who has ever sat behind that Resolute desk.
And that's absolutely a fact. And the other thing we knew this was going to happen with the open border policy of letting anyone and anyone come in unvetted, not even checked for medical conditions, but certainly not mental conditions and mental mindset. Are you coming in to be part of our nation and maybe make your life better? Or are you coming to cause mayhem, death, and destruction? We know the answer for some of them. We know that. But when you look at threats inside our nation, as we expected, we're finding numerous sleeper cells.
Yesterday, and I'm shocked more people aren't talking about this, dual citizen of Lebanon and America who openly identified as Palestinian went into the Air National Guard to, according to the indictment, to get military weapons training. He was just charged with 9 counts related to terrorism yesterday. Now, he had already been charged with detonating pipe bombs targeting Jewish facilities, but now, in this superseding indictment, it turns out he lied about his loyalty to the United States. He's being charged with false statements in an attempt to obtain a top-secret security clearance, among other things. Keep in mind, this is a U.S. service member that was, in fact, granted a security clearance review. He lied through 3 separate interviews before they caught him, all the while openly supporting and expressing support for Lebanon, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Look, here, page 4 of his indictment. Hamad, his name, he told others that despite joining the Air Force, he was still more loyal to Palestine and Lebanon than the United States.
That's the kind of guy I want in my military, right? Of course not. And he got that deep into it. And he lied on every one of them. And then suddenly realized, this doesn't compute. And, of course, we know where a lot of sleeper cells exist and how they're formed. They're inside our Ivy League universities and elsewhere. And to that extent, the government is now cutting off, intends, I should say, to cancel all remaining financial contracts with Harvard. The administration sending a letter to the federal agencies today asking them to identify any contracts they have with Harvard, whether they can be canceled or redirected. That's the plan at this point. The ending of these contracts, estimated to be about $100 million, would mark the severance between governments and an institution considered the nation's oldest university and a global research powerhouse. But this has been because, as Trump has singled them out, he said they are filled with allowing anti-Semitism and pervasive liberal bias. Harvard had rejected orders to allow a series of measures, including an audit of political leanings on campus and a ban on students deemed to be hostile to American values. So they're going to fight back, apparently, claiming the attacks are unconstitutional. There's nothing in the Constitution that says we must give money to private universities. Nothing. Find it for me. And certainly if we think they're basically serving as hotbeds for terrorist cells. The president has also said they will not be allowed to have future foreign students for the next 3 years. That's going to be a battle as well. I expect that. I expect those kinds of battles. But I don't want to hear Harvard weep and cry about, oh, my God, all the great programs we do that will suffer. Dig into your endowment fund. You have easily $2 billion in an endowment fund. You could cover your own cost. You don't need to be taking money from the public sector and other universities that are trying to get some money, and they're just not the prestige of Harvard, so they don't get as much. That's why we do need to destroy the Department of Education, put all the money back with the states, let them make decisions. Now, of course, if you send all that back to Massachusetts, Harvard will get some money back. But what they've been doing is using this as an opportunity to invade us. No more money for Harvard. And NPR and PBS also filing suit. And we want our money back, too. I say, you give it first to Larry Connors USA, and then I might consider seeing that you get a slice of it. How about that? Lock and load. Ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors USA.
I want to tell you more about Wellington Environmental's dustless blasting services. Wellington can blast paint, grease, graffiti, even stripes off parking lots. Truly amazing and powerful. But can Wellington blast something more sensitive? Yes, Wellington can use dry ice to blast soot and odors off smoke-damaged surfaces right after a fire. Currently, Wellington uses dry ice to clean mold off wood inside a home. Why? Well, dry ice immediately disappears, turns into a vapor. That means no mess to clean up, no damaged surfaces. You need to check with Wellington, always researching and practicing with new, better, faster, safer equipment and products for you. And it's very easy to schedule an estimator for your next project. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 644-4930. Be well with Wellington. McGuire Moving is Silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. I've got a great evening planned for you. We start with dining at the Oak Street Inn Lounge in Cottleville. We enjoy sunset on the rooftop, then down to the speakeasy. Just one visit, you're going to see why I'm always talking about the Oak Street Inn and Lounge. Plus, you might want to plan a staycation, a romantic getaway. Check out OakStreetInnandLounge.com for various events this summer. Oak Street Inn and Lounge, Cottleville. Oak Street Inn and Lounge, Cottleville.
This is News Talk STL.
I'm chasing tail lights straight as a crow flies, hunting just a standard country road. I've got a shotgun, it's riding shotgun, and we're both fixing to unload. Son, I know what you've done. There's only one way to outrun me. You better pray.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
When you look at James Comey and he talks about his own experience and his own knowledge and how terrible it is that we don't have him or people like him in the government now, let's go back and look at how he played a direct role in the weaponization of government against the American people and against Donald Trump. Let's look at his experience. For him, number one, let me just say this as a woman, for any man to blame, pin the blame on this on his wife, like, give me a break. Why don't you just own it yourself? Second of all, a person of his experience that he claims is so great that MSNBC and CNN have and continue to laud James Comey as this expert law enforcement man, yet he doesn't know what 86 means when he prosecuted gangsters and mobsters and people in the mafia throughout his entire career. Anybody who watches one of these old mobster movies knows and understands very directly what 86 means when referring to a person, not a dish on a menu in a restaurant.
That is going to come back to bite him in the butt over and over again, as it should. That was our Homeland Security Secretary, Tulsi Gabbard, talking about how James Comey, former FBI director, made a fool of himself by taking a snapshot of seashells he said he just happened to find on a walk with his wife. He didn't know what it meant, but he said, looks like an address. I'll take a picture of it. Why? And then he put it up on his Instagram. 86 does mean in the restaurant business, we don't have any more of that, so 86 the green beans. Or 86 the order. The customers did decide they didn't want it. It can also mean in the mob language, he sleeps with the fishes. Fit in for some concrete shoes. But Comey, being a former FBI director, those two numbers meant nothing to him. Oh, I know. Maybe it's the reverse of Larry's birthday. I'm 68 instead of 86. Maybe that's it. No, I'm not going to make excuses. But the point is, right behind it was 86-47. Trump is our 47th president, and he still made no connection. If you are that much of a dodo, there's no damn well anyway you should have been in charge of the FBI if you can't figure that one out. He said, my wife suggested I take a picture of it. I said this the other day. Do I have evidence supporting it? No, I don't. Do I have a gut feeling? Yes, I do. Were those shells there to begin with or not? Did they put them there and then just decide to say they were there? I'd really like to know, because I don't think we have the full story yet. If they'd been there for a while, don't you imagine there'd been a little erosion and they'd been moved around a little bit? Okay, maybe they're far enough up the beach that they're not going to be actually in the water, so there'll be no motion for a while. And then they just happen to be on the route they would take walking the beach. Are you seeing where I'm going? How many coincidences do you want to allow? And then he says, and he said it even on a TV interview, well, my wife spotted it and said, take a picture of it. Blaming her for him taking the picture and then putting it out. Oh, interesting find here. Wonder what it means. As Tulsi Gabbard said, what kind of man is that would be very quick to throw his wife under the bus? So here's my other coinky dinky I don't buy. She was with him. They probably do take beach walks from time to time. She was with him so he could say, she was with me, so everyone can know that I had her with me, and we looked and found that. Now, my suspicion, he went out and put them down early and goes back and gets her, and they walk down the beach and walk. I'll be darned. Look what I found. We found. Could be she was involved in putting them there. I have no idea. But I do think that it's not just by coincidence that they happen to take that route, walk right past that, and when they're on a joint walk, just him. Here's why I think that. If it had just been him saying, I was out for a walk on the beach and I looked and I found it, I thought, oh, I'll take a picture of that. Everybody immediately would say, you're ahead of me. You jumped ahead of me. Everybody would say he did it himself and took a picture. Oh, but see, now he's got a witness to be with him, his wife. He just made her complicit in his lie. And I'm calling it a lie. Can I prove it? No. Can he prove it's not a lie? I don't think he can. But as Tulsi Gabbard said, the fact that he would do this, then turn around and try to blame it upon his wife in some fashion, trying to flee any accountability. I didn't put it there. I know nothing. I saw nothing. My wife is the one who made me put it on Instagram. She didn't make you do anything. Even if you say she suggested, well, you're not smart enough to think, it's probably not a good idea, babe. We should pass on that. But again, because he had her with him as they're walking the beach and stumble upon it, why not take a picture? Once again, Tulsi Gabbard.
So what I get from James Comey is, and why I said what I said, and I know that the Secret Service is investigating this, but why I said what I said is when you have a person of his stature that in this country has been lauded as a man who represents fairness and integrity and the rule of law, posting something that is a call to get rid of our president, the 47th president of the United States, Donald Trump, you imagine the kind of impact that has. And again, you go back to the fact that Donald Trump has had 2 assassination attempts on his life. You have others within James Comey's cohort who call President Trump today's modern-day Hitler, that he's a Nazi, that he is a direct and existential threat to our country and the American people. We should not be surprised that this president has had 2 assassination attempts on his life, and why James Comey's post should be taken very seriously. And I know that the Secret Service is doing exactly that.
I'm glad to hear the Secret Service is bothering to look at it. I don't know really what they can find at this point. If there's any DNA, I assume they'll find it. I don't know for a fact that they can or will. I'd love for someone to surface with pictures of showing that they were actually putting them in the sand themselves. I'd love to see that, but not very likely it's going to happen. But Tulsi Gabbard, we were talking previously in the preceding segment, I think it's worth going back and discussing again, that Newsmax was pointing out that we've got so many sleeper cells in this country that would look for an opportunity to take out the president. This report by Newsmax.
Yesterday, and I'm shocked more people aren't talking about this, dual citizen of Lebanon and America who openly identified as Palestinian went into the Air National Guard to, according to the indictment, to get military weapons training. He was just charged with 9 counts related to terrorism yesterday. Now, he had already been charged with detonating pipe bombs targeting Jewish facilities, but now, in this superseding indictment, it turns out he lied about his loyalty to the United States. He's being charged with false statements in an attempt to obtain a top-secret security clearance, among other things. Keep in mind, this is a U.S. service member that was, in fact, granted a security clearance review. He lied through 3 separate interviews before they caught him, all the while openly supporting and expressing support for Lebanon, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Look, here, page 4 of his indictment. Hamad, his name, he told others that despite joining the Air Force, he was still more loyal to Palestine and Lebanon than the United States.
Really? More loyal to them? Leo Terrell, of course, who was a civil rights attorney, also a member of the Fox News staff, points out that DOJ is also reviewing all leads after that left-wing pro-Hamas praise of the D.C. attacker, the one who shot down the 2 Jewish students, I should say the Jewish couple, the other night. Yeah, we should be looking into that in more detail. The White House's attorney is reporting that Harvard is denying the Trump administration basic information about student visas. They're not going to release that, but they want their money. And in the meantime, Harvard's Kennedy School is now estimating, because of the threats by the Trump administration, they could lose 60% of its student body if the Trump administration ban on international enrollment takes effect. And that is because many fear it's been hijacked by anti-Israeli activists. Maybe you clean house, you wouldn't have that issue. Coming up, Jonathan Turley talking about that judge who thinks she can help a prisoner escape and face no charges.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
Question: are you looking to unlock the full potential of artificial intelligence for your business? I want you to meet my friends at PRI Global, named by the St. Louis Business Journal as a leading IT consulting firm. 25 years helping local and worldwide companies. PRI Global has a free survey to determine where your company stands in your AI journey. You simply go to priglobal.ai, priglobal.ai. And I also have a phone number, so get ready to copy that number. And I'll remind you that PRI Global has its own AI lab, creating, adapting, developing, pushing the boundaries for what AI can do for you. Here's the number, 636-689-0545. 636-689-0545. Or visit priglobal.ai. priglobal.ai. Here's great news. Napoli Kirkwood is now open. So that means fine dining right in the heart of Kirkwood. So you have the original Cafe Napoli in downtown Clayton, Napoli 2, Town and Country, Napoli 3 on the streets of St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, plus Napoli Brothers Pasta and Pizza in the Chesterfield Valley. All of those locations, and now adding Napoli Kirkwood. What a great place to dine. Napoli Kirkwood, now open. Renewal by Andersen wants you to know this. Andersen products increase a home's value by at least 15%. Renewal by Andersen is the full-service window and door replacement division of Andersen. How do you get through it? You go to rbastl.com, and here's a deal. $279 off every window, $729 off every patio or entry door. No payments, zero interest, 18 months. RBASTL. You've worked hard for your money, so protect it. Meet my friend Bob Leslie and ask about the Gain and Retain Plan. Leslie Consulting, 40 years in the St. Louis area as a leader in brokerage and risk management. Call 314-721-0066, 721-0066. Oh, and ask Bob how he was the L.A. Dodger #1 pick. LeslieConsulting.com.
This is News Talk STL.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
You know, these types of videotapes always make it more difficult for the defense. I spent much of my career as a criminal defense attorney, and that type of visual evidence makes it very difficult because there's no denying what occurred here. What the judge is trying to say is that she has immunity, that what she was doing as a judge. I find that pretty hard to understand. You know, if you are an NFL linebacker, you have a right to tackle people on the field. You don't have a right to go out in the parking lot and start tackling people. You had the same situation as a member of Congress. You had protections under speech and debate on what you said on the floor. But when you left the floor, you lost those special protections. This video shows that same line here. She first tells these agents to go speak to the chief judge. She falsely tells them that they cannot conduct an arrest in the hallway, which is not true. She tells them to go talk to the chief judge. And what does he say in response? He says, of course you can carry out the arrest in the hallway. So she was wrong. So she left her courtroom, and even though she was wearing a robe, that was not part of her courtroom. It was not part of her proceeding. She was facilitating someone's escape from federal authority. And I don't see how that fits into any judicial function.
And in fact, it does not. That's Jonathan Turley, professor of law at George Washington University, also Fox News analyst, talking about the judge that decided she was going to help an illegal being sought by ICE who was in her court. She was going to help him escape. Misdirect them, say you can't arrest them in here. And then she took him out a back door and a back door out of the courthouse, said, go free to roam about the country, kill, rape, plunder. Well, Larry, maybe you went over the board there. Went over a little bit. She didn't say you can go kill, rape, and murder. But if she's setting this guy free when they've got numerous charges against him already, who knows what he's going to do? And especially if he realizes, hey, there are judges that let me go regardless of what I do. And they'll help protect me from the federal agents coming after me or any law enforcement agents. There are so many out there that right now, they're worried. They're worried. And yet, then you got some others that are really stupid worried. And I'll give you an example like that involving preteens using social media before we wrap up this hour. But while we're talking about the issue of dealing with illegals in the country, who've been told, look, if you're here illegally, you know you're here illegally, you can deport yourself, go back to your homeland, and at some time in the future, you can apply to come in. And unless you were under an order of expulsion, you'll probably be allowed to come back in at some point. There's a Mexican singer with suspected drug cartel ties. Now, I don't know if she is or isn't. I don't know her, or him, I should say. But he had a U.S. tour coming up, Julian Alvarez. I have heard the name. I don't know him. I don't know that much about him. But he took to social media to tell the fans in Arlington, Texas, he was forced to cancel his shows because he was refused an entry visa. saying we don't have the ability to come to the U.S. and fulfill our commitment. The event will be postponed until we see what happens next. This is not the first time he had to do so. Last year, the Biden administration unexpectedly approved his request for a temporary visa to perform in the U.S. First time in 7 years he was allowed entry. That meant that also the Obama administration had denied his entry. U.S. officials say that this guy is linked to Raul Flores, a Sinaloa drug cartel leader. Alvarez continues to say, I had nothing to do with it. Did partner with Flores in a real estate deal and saying, well, I didn't know. I didn't know it was connected with him. I didn't know he suspected drug cartel. I doubt that. I doubt you get into business with anybody and you don't know their background. You want to make that claim and that charge, well, you can go right ahead. Now, dealing with our trade issues, as we were talking about previously, Trump says the slow-walking European Union has suddenly changed its tune after a 50% tariff threat, 50% tariff threat. The European Union suddenly rushed to set up meeting dates. Trump fired a shot across their bows, basically, vowing, if you don't get to the table and get something resolved, we will hit you with a 50% tariff because you're deliberately slow-walking the talks. They were just dragging their heels, thought if we just drag it out. Trump has had enough. He said, you're either going to step up and make a deal with us, which would be a positive deal, and then we can start trade, and it'd be better for you and be good for us as well. And he added, he said, I hope that they will finally, like my same demand to China, open up the European nations for trade with U.S. And that's right. China has stepped forward to do so. Many experts are saying the fact that they're going to continue to have ongoing trade talks between China and U.S. are positive, not necessarily groundbreaking, but positive. Because if they're signaling that they're going to want to talk and work some kind of deal out, they obviously want a deal. The European Union suffers what Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, recently called collective action problem. That means got to go to a committee. Now it's got to go to another committee. Oh, somebody wasn't there for that committee meeting. We'll have to do it again. Oh, we got another committee meeting to take. In other words, delay. And Trump doesn't want to play that game. And he's made it very clear to them. You either step forward now or you'll be cut out. You know what that means inside the European Union? They're suddenly realizing, I don't want to be our nation that gets cut out. Let Germany and Spain and France do their little thing, but we're going to step forward and make a deal. They start doing that, the European Union will break apart. England already has, but England is not part of the European Union. You remember Brexit, they got out of it. Other nations are saddled with it at this point, but they could also find their way out. And then getting anything done with China, that's another key point of whatever we can accomplish with China. And when it comes to making it happen, one of those that's in the forefront of dealing with the China talks acknowledges that this is an opportunity. This is the ambassador to NATO, Matt Whitaker, on China.
I think President Trump has brought China to the table. They do need our market a lot more than we need theirs. But, at the same time, the Iowa farmer, my friends back home that sell their exports to China also would like those markets opened. I mean, it's a competitive world. And what President Trump wants is fair trade. He doesn't suggest that somehow, we're special as the United States of America. But at the same time, he understands that our economy and our innovation is really the envy of the world. And so we should receive the benefits from those advantages that the United States of America has. And unfortunately, whether it's China, whether it's the EU, and so many others, they take advantage of the United States of America. They're not fair with their trade deals, and we need to change that. So, I'm looking forward to President Trump negotiating these to a perfect resolution.
That'd be great. That'd be great. It'd also be great for the Chinese people. There's a story out today, and who knows what's going to happen to this guy. I could assume, and it would be the worst. This is a Chinese worker at a textile factory. As we told you, because of the tariffs as they stand now with China, and no talks were underway for a period of time, we were seeing factories close left and right inside China. And 5 to 10 million were no longer getting any money. And what money they got was not much. Well, now we have a Chinese worker who apparently is accused of setting a textile plant on fire. Why? He's protesting, I'm not being paid. That kind of stuff begins to grow and escalate in China. That could be big. Now, it's a big risk for him and his family that he's charged with it, whether or not he did it. If they claim he did it, it's up to him to try to prove he's innocent. Our Memorial Day, of course, is come and gone. And I got a few things I want to share with that, but before we do that, I mentioned to you earlier about some of the strange things that we're seeing happen with kids right now. There's a new study by the University of California, San Francisco, finds that use of social media among preteens is associated with a massive 35% increase in symptoms of depression. I want you to stop and think about that. Do you have a preteen who has access to social media, always on it, head is always buried into the phone? There's a 35% increase in the symptoms of depression. One pediatrician said we were looking at 12,000 9-year-olds for 4 years and looking at their social media habits, their mental well-being. He said the study found at the beginning of the research, the average social media time was 7 minutes an hour per day, 7 minutes a day. By the end of the 4-year period, these children were spending 73 minutes a day on social media platforms, TikTok, Snapchat, whatever. He says clearly it's not doing them any good if it's leading to depression. Why is that? Because they see other people better looking or mocking them in some way? We do know from the world of Disney, there's a transgender TikToker says he no longer feels safe at Disney. A restaurant worker misgendered him, calling him sir. Said, it makes me to immediately leave because I no longer feel safe here, this TikToker. The server can be heard explaining where the food from the bread tower comes from when the man apparently identifies as female, says, coconut bread from Thailand? And the server says, yes, sir. Well, the offender said, ma'am. And the wait person said, oh, I'm sorry about that. And the trans said into the camera, well, that totally sucks the joy out of all of this. I don't feel safe. Yeah, there's a problem with our kids hooked into this stuff. There really is. kids of this age that were at Disney or that have been on social media, they were the ones that went to war in World War II and also into Vietnam and other places. And this Memorial Day, Vice President Vance had a message for them.
This is a sacred place, an eternal resting spot for our nation's sons and daughters. We gather in solemn commemoration of their sacrifice and the sacrifice made by all those who gave up their lives in service to our beloved country. In 1915, President Woodrow Wilson laid the cornerstone of the memorial amphitheater we gather in today. Now, buried within it was a copper box which contained mementos of profound significance to the amphitheater's designers and to our entire country. There were 4 things: an American flag, a Bible, a copy of our Declaration of Independence, and a copy of the U.S. Constitution. And the objects they chose to dedicate to posterity, those Americans remind us of the values we hold timeless and dear as a nation and as a people.
And they stood the ground and in the gap when the time came. I've had a commentary running throughout the Memorial Day weekend. I won't go through it entirely, but it points out if you're sitting somewhere and you look over and there's an empty table, there could be people there. But somebody didn't come back from the war, so they had no family, no children, no grandchildren. Keep that in mind. And remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can follow Larry on Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook. This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.